Liam adjusted his cufflinks, the sharp lines of his tailored suit reflecting the meticulous nature of the man himself. His reflection stared back from the mirror, calm, composed, with eyes too calculating to miss the cracks forming in the fragile glass of his marriage. Natalie had been working late, again. Deadlines, client meetings, urgent deliverables. She'd said with that rehearsed smile, the one that no longer reached her eyes. But Liam wasn't a man to be fooled by charming facades. He had built a career on his attention to detail, spotting patterns others missed. And now patterns whispered from the shadows of their once perfect life. The first seed of doubt had been a simple thing, a text left on her phone, half hidden under her pillow. Last night was incredible, same time Thursday. No name, no context, just enough to ignite suspicion. Liam hadn't confronted her then. Emotion was a blunt weapon, and he preferred the precision of a scalpel. Instead, he planted his own seed, a GPS tracker discreetly installed in her car. A quiet sentinel, it reported back with cold, unforgiving truth. Night after night, Natalie's car wasn't at the office. It rested outside a sleek apartment complex on the other side of town. Liam didn't need to guess whose name was on the lease. Chris, the charming colleague she'd casually mentioned once or twice, laughing off any insinuation. His next move was as calculated as the financial portfolios he managed. He hired a private investigator, a man with no interest in the morality of the situation, only in delivering facts. Photos arrived within days. Natalie and Chris tangled in embraces not meant for public view, their secret life captured frame by damning frame. Liam stared at those photos late into the night, the glow of his desk lamp casting harsh shadows across his face. There was no confrontation, no shouting match, no pleading for explanations. That would be too easy. For her. No, Liam would wait. He would craft his revenge with the same precision he applied to every facet of his life. Patience was his greatest weapon, and the perfect opportunity was already approaching. A company event at Natalie's office, a celebration of success, integrity, and teamwork. The irony was too delicious to ignore. As he closed the folder, sealing away the evidence for now, Liam allowed himself a rare smile, cold, calculated, and filled with the satisfaction of knowing that soon, Natalie's carefully curated world would shatter in front of an audience she could never escape. The days leading up to the company event unfolded with meticulous precision. Liam moved through his routines like a man possessed, each calculated step masking the storm brewing beneath his composed exterior. To Natalie, he remained the same attentive husband, polite, steady, reliable. His indifference was his disguise, a mask worn with the ease of a seasoned actor. She had no reason to suspect he knew that was his advantage. Liam spent his evenings refining his plan. The folder of evidence grew thicker, filled with surveillance photos, text message printouts, and detailed reports from the private investigator. GPS logs showed the frequency of Natalie's visits to Chris's apartment. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and the occasional Sunday when she claimed to be catching up on work. The irony wasn't lost on Liam. The woman who prided herself on her professionalism had become predictably careless in her deceit. But Liam wasn't just collecting evidence. He was orchestrating her downfall. Every detail mattered. He researched Natalie's company structure, noting key figures in her professional circle, her manager, the HR director, a few influential colleagues whose opinions she valued more than she'd admit. He even discovered that Chris wasn't just a fling. He was angling for a promotion, leveraging not just his charm, but his connection to Natalie. That detail made Liam's victory all the sweeter. By the time the event arrived, a sleek corporate affair celebrating a record-breaking quarter, Liam was ready. The venue was everything he'd hoped for, floor-to-ceiling glass windows overlooking the city's skyline, polished marble floors, and dozens of well-dressed professionals sipping champagne under dim, sophisticated lighting. It was the perfect stage for the performance he'd been rehearsing in his mind for weeks. Liam arrived early, dressed sharply in a tailored charcoal suit that complemented his composed demeanor. He was the picture of calm, the model husband there to support his successful wife. The folder tucked under his arm was understated, a slim, leather-bound portfolio that drew no attention. Its contents, however, were the sharpest weapon in his arsenal. He watched Natalie from across the room, her laughter too bright, her gestures overly animated as she charmed her colleagues. She played the part of the dedicated professional and the loving wife flawlessly, greeting him with a kiss on the cheek when she noticed him. Liam smiled back, his expression warm, his eyes betraying nothing. The event unfolded in a blur of speeches, toasts, and polite small talk. Liam navigated the crowd effortlessly, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries, all while observing. Chris arrived fashionably late, his confidence evident in the way he scanned the room, his gaze lingering just a second too long when it met Natalie's. Liam noted every glance, every subtle touch, the silent language of betrayal they thought was invisible. When the moment finally came, a pause in the program where the floor opened for acknowledgments, Liam stepped forward. His heart didn't race, his voice didn't waver. He was calm, collected, and devastatingly precise. "Since we're all here to celebrate honesty, hard work, and integrity," he began, his voice carrying effortlessly across the room, "I thought it would be the perfect time to share something special." Natalie's smile faltered. Chris froze mid-sip of his drink. The room grew silent as Liam opened the folder, revealing not just the evidence, but the end of their carefully constructed lies. The silence that followed Liam's words was deafening, a fragile pause suspended in the sterile air of corporate ambition. Conversations ceased mid-sentence, glasses hovered mid-air, and all eyes shifted toward him, the devoted husband, standing with the quiet authority of a man who controlled not just the room, but the narrative itself. Natalie's expression shifted in subtle betrayals. First confusion, then the faintest flicker of fear. She forced a brittle smile, a reflexive mask of professionalism, but Liam saw it, the tension in her jaw, the quickened breath she tried to disguise with a sip of champagne. Chris, less adept at concealing his discomfort, shifted uncomfortably, his confident posture wilting under the sudden scrutiny. Liam remained composed, his voice smooth, deliberate. "I've always believed in celebrating transparency," he continued, opening the leather-bound folder with the care of a man revealing priceless artifacts. Inside were photos, crisp, high-resolution images of Natalie and Chris, their intimacy frozen in damning clarity. Parked cars under dim streetlights, stolen kisses in shadowed corners, hotel receipts neatly paper-clipped to screenshots of text messages. He held up a photo, the image stark against the sterile glow of recessed lighting. Natalie, laughing, her hand entwined with Chris's as they exited a boutique hotel. The timestamp was unmistakable. A Thursday evening she'd claimed was spent finalizing a client presentation. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Whispers bloomed like wildflowers. Uncontrollable, spreading fast. Natalie's colleagues exchanged glances, their expressions oscillating between shock and morbid fascination. Her boss, a stern-faced woman named Claire, narrowed her eyes, the professional facade slipping just enough to reveal the disapproval beneath. Natalie stepped forward, her voice trembling but defiant. "Liam, this isn't the time." "Oh, I think it's the perfect time," Liam interrupted, his tone still calm but edged with steel. He turned to the audience, addressing them with the ease of a practiced speaker. "After all, what better occasion to discuss honesty than in front of those who value it most?" Chris tried to intervene, his voice strained. "This is personal. We don't need to—" Liam's gaze snapped to him, sharp and unyielding. "You made it public the moment you decided to conduct your affair in the shadows of this very office." The room felt smaller, the walls pressing inward with the weight of unspoken judgments. Natalie's veneer of control cracked further, her face pale beneath the harsh fluorescence. She glanced around, searching for an ally, but found only the cold detachment of colleagues, eager to witness the unraveling without being part of it. Liam wasn't done. He reached into the folder again, this time pulling out legal documents. Divorce papers, already signed. "I've taken the liberty of filing these," he announced, his voice steady. "Our accounts? Frozen. The apartment? Already in my name. I thought I'd spare you the trouble of trying to build a future on lies." Natalie's mouth opened but no words came. Chris stood rigid, his earlier arrogance reduced to hollow silence. Liam closed the folder, his task complete. Without another glance he turned and walked away, leaving behind a room heavy with the echoes of exposed betrayal. Liam's footsteps echoed through the marble-floored lobby, each one punctuating the silence he left behind. But the real noise was happening in that glass-walled conference room. The hushed whispers erupting like small fires, the shocked gasps, the hurried footsteps of colleagues retreating to safer corners of the office, eager to digest the spectacle from a distance. Natalie stood frozen, the color drained from her face, her carefully curated mask of professionalism shattered. The room that had once been her kingdom now felt like a courtroom, filled with silent jurors, colleagues, superiors, subordinates, all witnesses to the unraveling of her double life. No amount of charm or clever excuses could rewrite the story Liam had so ruthlessly laid bare. She fumbled with the divorce papers, her hands trembling, the bold signature at the bottom mocking her. She glanced at Chris, expecting, what? Support? Reassurance? But Chris was already stepping back, his face etched with the harsh realization that the affair, once thrilling and forbidden, had mutated into something toxic under the fluorescent lights of exposure. "Chris," she whispered, her voice thin, desperate. But Chris wasn't looking at her. His eyes darted around the room, landing on Claire, their boss, whose sharp gaze had morphed from curiosity to disgust. Claire didn't need to say anything. Her disapproval radiated like heat. For Chris, the affair wasn't just a personal scandal anymore. It was a professional liability. "I need to take care of something," Chris mumbled, adjusting his tie, the confidence that once defined him now crumbling. Without meeting Natalie's gaze, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, clutching the evidence of her own downfall. The whispers grew louder, less restrained. Words like affair, divorce, and humiliation floated through the air, heavy and sharp. The room, once filled with polite laughter and corporate small talk, now throbbed with the unspoken question, how could she be so reckless? Natalie tried to collect herself, straightening her blazer, smoothing her skirt, as if fixing the surface could somehow undo the damage underneath. She approached Claire, forcing a smile that felt brittle even to herself. "Claire, I can explain," she began, her voice faltering under the weight of her own embarrassment. Claire raised an eyebrow, her arms crossed. "Explain what, exactly? That you've been using company time for personal affairs? That you've compromised the integrity of your role?" Natalie's mouth opened, but no words came. The truth was, there was no explanation, no defense that wouldn't sound hollow against the evidence Liam had laid out. By the end of the day, Natalie's office was no longer hers. Claire, ever efficient, had HR send a formal notice citing misconduct. Her access was revoked, her email deactivated. What she had built over years was dismantled in a matter of hours. Meanwhile, Liam sat in the calm of his apartment, the city lights flickering beyond the windows. The folder of evidence was gone, irrelevant now. His victory wasn't in the documents, but in the undeniable fact that Natalie's betrayal had been exposed, not just to him, but to the world she valued most, and he felt nothing but relief. Weeks had passed since the confrontation, but the echoes of that day still lingered in the corridors of Natalie's former office. Her name, once spoken with respect, had become office folklore, a cautionary tale about ambition, deception, and the cost of forgetting that facades eventually crumble. Liam, however, had moved on. Or at least that's what he told himself. His life had settled into a new rhythm, quieter but strangely liberating. The apartment felt different now, not just because Natalie's things were gone, but because the weight of pretense had been lifted. No more late nights wondering where she was, no more questioning smiles over breakfast, just clarity, a cold, clean slate. Financially, Liam had secured everything. Their joint accounts were frozen, investments untangled, and the divorce finalized swiftly thanks to the ironclad prenup Natalie had once laughed off as unnecessary. The apartment was his, the car too. She left with nothing but her personal belongings and the residue of scandal clinging to her like smoke. Professionally, Liam thrived. The very qualities that had made his revenge so precise, strategic thinking, emotional discipline, attention to detail, were the same traits that propelled him forward. Promotions followed, not because of pity, but because he was damn good at what he did. His colleagues respected him even more, though few dared to mention the spectacle he'd orchestrated. It hung between them like an unspoken legend, but it wasn't all victories. There were nights when the silence grew too loud, when the absence of betrayal felt almost like a void. He'd replay the confrontation in his mind, not with regret but with a lingering question. Had he gone too far? Meanwhile, Natalie's world had collapsed like a house of cards. Chris had distanced himself within days of the scandal, citing professional boundaries as his excuse. Without Liam's financial support or her corporate salary, she struggled to maintain the lifestyle she'd once flaunted. She bounced between temporary jobs, her resume tainted by whispers no reference could erase. One rainy afternoon, Liam received an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line was simple: "I'm sorry." It was from Natalie. Her words were filled with the kind of remorse that came not from guilt, but from loss. She didn't apologize for the affair. Not really. She apologized for underestimating him, for believing he was too passive, too predictable. She wrote about regret, about missing the life they'd built, about wishing she'd made different choices. Liam read the message once, then again, his face expressionless. He didn't respond, not out of spite, but because there was nothing left to say. Some things didn't deserve closure. A few months later, Liam attended a corporate networking event not unlike the one where everything had unraveled. This time he was relaxed, no longer a man burdened by secrets. He met new people, laughed genuinely, and when he found himself in conversation with a woman named Elise Sharp, confident, with a warmth that didn't feel rehearsed, he realized something surprising. He wasn't angry anymore. As they talked, he found himself smiling in a way he hadn't for a long time. Not the calculated smile of a man hiding something, but the effortless grin of someone unburdened. Elise wasn't a distraction from the past. She was proof that the past didn't define him. Later that night, standing by his apartment window, Liam thought about Natalie one last time, not with bitterness, but with quiet reflection. She had been a chapter, messy, painful, but necessary, a lesson in self-respect, in knowing when to fight and when to walk away. And as he sipped his whiskey, the city lights sprawling beneath him, Liam finally felt it, not just relief, but peace. Because the ultimate revenge wasn't the public humiliation, the financial control, or the legal victory. The ultimate revenge was living well without her.